What are your worst college roommate horror stories? NSFW. Freshman year is always the hardest. My first roommate came from a party family and wanted to continue the tradition at college. I would wake up to her fucking random dudes all loudly masturbating whilst drunk. She would sometimes throw up when orgasming. The worst part was, she cared about her fellow partiers. Every night when she went out, she would get smashed, but would find people worse off than her. If they couldn't find their home or communicate, she'd drop them back at our tiny dorm room and go back to parties for another few hours, if she came back at all. The bad part was my bed wasn't lofted originally, so every night I'd wake up to people getting into bed with me and have to put them to sleep elsewhere. The worst it ever was when she dropped off a pledge who had triple what he should have to drink and had dropped some Molly. He was all over the place and I was afraid to leave him to sleep. She didn't come back that night. All night was spent carrying this guy back and forth to the girls only restroom so he could try to sober up. He was pretty fucked up well into the next day. Eventually he was good to go home and I walked him to his dorm across campus. When I returned home, there was my roommate, furiously drunk masturbating again. Why would you do that, Carol? I just wanted sleep. He had a girl over and I was like, okay, whatever, this is college. I asked him not to make too much noise as I had an exam in the morning, so I went to bed. Woke up at 2 AM with a heavy-set black guy over my bed saying over, "I'm your fairy black godmother." They thought it'd be funny to invite people over and mess with me. It's okay though. I looked at his girl, who he's been dating, and informed her of his current going long distance relationship and went back to bed. Had a roommate who literally never left the dorm room because he played World of Warcraft around the clock. He was so addicted that he had set up a fridge next to his desk and kept it stocked, so he only had to leave his desk as few times as possible. But here is the worst part. To cut down on restroom trips, he would urinate into a container at his desk and empty it only when it became full. It was disgusting. I had a roommate my first year in college who wanted to be my best friend. Before we met other people it was great and all, but because we had nothing in common, we grew apart. She started getting really passive aggressive and not talking to me when I came in the room. One night she woke me up at 3 AM and said we need to talk. She proceeded to explain how she signed up to have a best friend, not someone who just shared a room with her. She got angry when I didn't invite her to study with me in the library because I had my own work to do, and even when I wanted to go on a date with my boyfriend alone. She told me either I start doing everything with her or I move the freak out. I chose the latter. Towards the end of the year I walked in on my roommate jerking off a lot, up to 3 times on some days. It got to the point where I'd pretend to yell to my friends down the hall things like, "I'll be there in a minute. Let me just grab something from my room real quick," just to buy him a few seconds of time to close out of his tabs. He'd watch porn at his desk right in front of the door and pull his pants on. Sadly that stopped working when he started wearing headphones. Edit. Since everyone keeps asking why didn't you knock, it was because I never formally addressed the situation and didn't want to make it uncomfortable for knocking every time I went in. He was generally pretty quick when I went in my room to cover himself up and close out of the tab and act like nothing happened, so I did the same. I would walk in, he'd exit out of his porn and cover himself, generally with like a hoodie or something, so I would walk in, grab something, and head out, never acknowledge that I noticed. For all he knows I'm super oblivious, and he was close to getting caught a lot. Plus I didn't want to knock every time I wanted to go to my room. That's just crazy. Had a roommate freshman year who took a picture of my student ID so he could buy pizza when I wasn't on campus. Checked my transaction list one day and the kid charged $90 worth of pizza over about a month's period. Went to the campus police and they were able to tie it back to him. He got reassigned to another dorm room about 2 weeks later. When he moved out of our, he took a bunch of my shit with him. Clothes, duffel bags, 5-pound bag of protein, and the remote to TV. Don't know if he thought I wouldn't notice or just didn't give a freak. I go back to the police and they make him come into the station. He denied the whole thing, but the idiot still had the remote in his pocket. Ended up getting all my money and shit back, but it was a pain in the ass. My college roommate was an extremely quiet athlete who would go weeks without speaking to me. When she asked me one day if she could order some protein bars, I was confused by the question. Why would my weird quiet roommate need to ask me this? She failed to mention the quantity of protein bars she wanted. She ordered about 50 jumbo cases of protein bars and a similar amount of protein powder online one day. The boxes filled up the entire free floor area of our room for the rest of the year. I had a little pathway cleared so I could walk to my bed. I lived in a frat house for 2 years, which was fun at times, but for the most part one really didn't love the party hard frat lifestyle. I had a roommate during my junior year who was a year younger than me. He developed addictions to multiple prescription drugs over the course of the year, and it really affected his personality. He would be irritable and lethargic 1 minute, and then a few minutes later, after popping some pills, he would be incredibly happy and tell me how much he loved and appreciated me. He would bring girls into the room and have sex with them literally right next to me. He would leave food all over the room and blame me for it. It was pretty bad. The absolute worst of it was when one night he literally crawled into our room one night after heavy drinking and pill popping and woke me up. He was sobbing and begged me to throw away his pills for him, which he kept in an old McDonald's French fry box. I told him that I would in the morning. This ended up being a mistake, because the next morning he heard the pills rattling around in the box as I picked it up and immediately leaped out of bed asking me what I was doing. He threatened to fight me if I didn't put them down, and I decided it wasn't worth it. The story has a happy ending though, because he took a year off from school, admitted himself to rehab, got better, and is now a semester away from finishing his degree. This one happened to a friend of mine. I used to play college baseball back in the day. One day a buddy of mine shows up to practice with a broken arm, so naturally everyone wants to know what happened. What he tells us next is quite easily the funniest broken bone story I will ever hear. His roommate, we'll call him B, and his roommate's GF, we'll call her G, tell my friend, we'll call him F, that they are going out to the bar and ask him to come along. He declined, stating that he was going to go to bed early as we had early baseball practice. So F falls asleep on the top bunk. Hours pass before B and G return, both pretty well drunk. They have forgotten, or just don't care, that F is in the top bunk and B and G start having sex in the bottom bunk. F decides to be a bro and not say anything. So B and G are going at it when B gets the bright idea to try anal for the first time with G. G agrees to let him try. They start slowly, and from what F says, it sounded like they were enjoying themselves. Well, eventually B gets off and decides to pull out and notices he has poop on his dong. B immediately reacts by throwing up all over the back of GG. Being totally disgusted herself, ends up throwing up as well. F is now laughing so hysterically in the top bunk that he falls out of the bed, hitting the ground and breaking his arm. To this day, B and G do not acknowledge this story. University of Arizona, Santa Cruz Hall, full of 72. Second or third week, classes had started, and there was some shuffling of people, and I got moved down the hall. The dorm manager took me there, gave me my new key, and introduced me to my new roommate, who I immediately got a weird vibe from, as he wouldn't say anything or look me in the eye. I put down my suitcases and left for a class. When I opened the door just a few hours later, my way was blocked by a butcher paper wall with 2 paper doors in it. The doors were hinged with tape, and only the left one was open. I could see my things through it, so I entered, and from there I could see that he had constructed a central wall of butcher paper, dividing the room floor to ceiling, giving us each half the window. The metal bunk bed had been moved to the center of the room and embedded in the paper wall, such that I could only get to the bottom bunk. He had the top. It was quite skillfully done. We each had complete privacy. There were no gaps anywhere, even on the floor. Though I admired his work, I didn't want half a room or a crazy roommate, so I got the manager, who gave me another room. Even though my new room was just 2 doors away, I never saw the crazy guy again. Oh god, I have 2. The first would come back drunk at like 3 AM on a weeknight and just whip it out and start pissing on the floor. At first it was intermittent, but then it started to happen a few times a week. Then almost every day, I'd throw shit at him. If I woke up, he never even flinched. Eventually he just started passing out on his bed and pissing that instead. Thankfully I had the top bunk. The other guy was super Christian. To the extent that he didn't bring a computer to school because it took away from his time with God. Well, after a while, my girlfriend found a bunch of websites in my history. Like, really sick shit. I know it wasn't me visiting those sites. I started locking my computer every time I even went to the bathroom. Oh yeah, and bought a new keyboard and mouse. I had a ditz of a female roommate. I'm a very quiet lady and we did not really agree on the type of people we hung out with. First week of college she got a job at Hooters. 4 weeks in, it was about 3 AM and she came in drunk and laid down on her bed. My bed was less than 2 feet away, only blocked by a chest-high bookshelf. Anyway, she broke up with her boyfriend the first week because she wanted to have new experiences. Honestly, I'm not trying to fault her for liking sex. She's more than welcome to explore her sexuality, but didn't appreciate it this way. She calls up her ex and talks to him, and they start having phone sex. I'm way too awkward at this age and just try not to act like I was awake. She knew I was there. She even mentioned it to the ex. This went on for like 20 minutes, and I'm getting annoyed because I stupidly signed up for an 8 AM class. She finally orgasms, and then she starts crying. For a good half an hour, she's crying to this guy about how much she misses him. I felt kinda bad and really tired. I was grumpy the next day and weirded out that she thought that was okay with her roommate in the room. Not my roommate, but close enough. First year of college, living in a dorm. It's nearly the end of the second semester, around April. My roommate is away for a few days on a trip somewhere, and I'm up late at night playing video games. I have my headphones on and my dorm door is open. I was great friends with all the guys I lived around. Well, around 2:30 AM, one of the guys from the other end of the hall walks in the room, and he's just in his boxers. His nickname is Caveman. Caveman is a frat guy, and he was known for getting blackout drunk, and doing cocaine, and doing just crazy shit in general. So, I figure he's drunk, and just got back from a party. Caveman stands over my shoulder as I play GTA V for who knows how long, before I realize he's even there. To be honest, I thought he was my friend who lived across the hall. I don't know him very well, so I try to get him to leave, but he just crawls into my roommate's bed and passes out. I tug at him, but Caveman's a much larger fellow than I am, so I didn't wanna get hit or something, so I didn't tug too much. I finally just go wake up my rap, and after about 5 minutes we get Caveman to walk back down the hall to his room. No problem. Pretty weird situation. Well, a few days later my roommate comes back, and he sits down to play on his brand new $500 keyboard, only to find out that it's acting up. We investigate a little bit, and come to find out that there is pee in the keyboard. It smelled like piss, and when he opened it up, he poured out piss that had just been sitting there. The only explanation was that Caveman had peed on the keyboard thinking, oh look, white toilet. He ended up getting it cleaned up and got it to work just fine, but it still smells like pee to this day. This happened last year. An update on Caveman. At the last home football game of the season, he ran out on the field completely naked and was escorted off by some police officers. My roommate was really famous for vines back when that was a new thing. You could tell that he was crazy, but he just kept setting the bar higher. He would take dumps completely naked with the stall door open. He would sit naked at his desk and occasionally adjust his balls. He would constantly do ridiculous things and record it for his vines. He would get up in your face and scream random crap. You could hear him constantly making random honking noises and yelling things like penis or cooch, but he definitely didn't have Tourette's. I would have to tell him to stop making ridiculous noises about 5 times before I could get to sleep. The rumor is that he raped his last roommate, but apparently the college didn't find enough evidence to kick him out, and the criminal investigation isn't done yet. I'm just glad that I got out of there. A good friend of mine had a roommate that loved to snoop, steal, and squeal during their freshman year. Snoop, my friend's bags would be unzipped, boxes opened, laptop opened, personal items moved, etc. Steal, my friend would hide her jewelry in bag, in a sock, in the back of a drawer. More than once she caught her roommate wearing her jewelry. Squeal, Literally anything that was meant to be personal was spread throughout the floor within a day. Zero privacy was to be had. Thankfully, after numerous complaints and reports, they were split up after the first semester. My roommate was cool, but one time one of the girls down the hall started screaming. Turns out she was pregnant, and it was baby time. Oh, also that one time someone duct taped all the doors shut so fully they had to call the fire department to get the doors open. We couldn't leave our hallway, and if there had been an emergency, we would have been in a bad way. No escape through the windows. Like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.